Hi everyone, Emily here from Emily Reads, and Merry Christmas. Um, it is Christmas Day. I have my mother's Christmas tree pin on. Um, my mother passed away actually on 2009 today, and so I like to wear this pin. It was her favorite Christmas pin, just to remember her by. Um, Today, I'm actually going to be filming and uploading some videos simply because I have time and I can. Um, I was going to travel out of town. I had a 4.5 hour drive ahead of me. And then Thursday, Friday, we had blizzard like conditions and wind chill temperatures of -35 below. And I just said, I and looking at the map of Illinois and the road conditions, I said it's not safe for me to drive. So I'm home and I am celebrating Christmas by myself, and that's okay. But so I thought today I would bring for you first the best of 2022. So, and these are books that I read in the year of 2022. So they aren't necessarily books that came out in 2022, but books that I read for the first time in 2022. I tried to not repeat an author. I made an exception for one. If you know me, you probably know and could guess who that is. But I did make an exception for one, but all these others are repeats. And actually, I didn't. No, I did read two books by a couple of authors. But at any rate, let's get started. These are somewhat in order of like the least best to the best. Um, but they're all really good reads. So, first up is A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. And this is the first book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series. So, and I've only read the first book and I need to read more. I really enjoyed this book. First of all, the cover is absolutely gorgeous and there's illustrations throughout the book. They are not in color, they're in black and white because there's like a sketchbook. And so, Lady Trent is like the best way for me to describe this is think of like Jane Austen meets dragons and fantasy. So Lady Trent is like a Victorian woman and she has been raised to, follow the rules of being prim and proper, but her interests are in dragons and studying dragons. And that's not prim and proper. That's not what ladies should do. And so um, she she does marry a man who encourages her in her studies, and they're able to go on a trip with another man who studies dragons. And so, and her role is that she's going to be like the sketch artist there. And so, this book deals a lot with women's agency and women's place in society. What is their role? Why do we have those roles? Like, and breaking those roles for what for so that way they can have autonomy and agency. There's also like a mystery involved in this, and that was really good as well. But I did enjoy this, and I hope to read more in this series. I just don't know when. I just don't know when, but I'm looking forward to reading more. The next book is actually I'm holding Beach Read, but I've already read this book. So really what it is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I don't have an actual physical copy of Book Lovers. I have it on my Kindle. And Book Lovers, I will say this, I started it and I soft DNF'd it. And then I had to restart it. Because when I first started it, like the humor just wasn't sitting with me. But it is so funny. So funny. So the story of Book Lovers is Nora is she's a literary agent. And she is kind of like when you look at so Book Lovers kind of makes fun of like the Hallmark movie tropes. And so she in like if she were in like the Hallmark movie, she'd be like the woman who like is like corporate. I'm gonna make a name for myself. I'm gonna step on you. Like I'm heartless, and she really isn't heartless, but like she's very very career focused and making a name. And her boyfriends always end up breaking up with her because they'll go to a small town for some reason and they'll meet someone who's from the small town and they fall in love with that small town person and they end up breaking up with Nora. And so Nora and her sister, they decide to go to this small town that one of the authors that she represents has a book that is set in this small town. And there she meets Charlie, and she's had run-ins with Charlie before. He's an editor, and she meets Charlie, who's this editor, in this small town. And it just basically pokes fun of all these like different Hollywood or Hallmark movie tropes. I really enjoyed it. And not only is it lighthearted, but also tackles some heavy themes. And I just appreciated, like, I love Charlie. I appreciated his character and what he does for Nora. And I also just loved the banter between Nora and Charlie. Like, they're humorous and they're funny, but the humor doesn't cross into like mocking each other and being cruel. So I think I would rate book lovers and beach read. Like, it's hard for me to decide which one I like better. One day I like beach read better, the other day I like book lovers better. But for sure, those two are really good. Then the next book, oh man, my tower of books is beginning to fall over. The next book is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. And I was really hesitant to read this book. When this first came out, there was so much hype around this book several years ago, to the point where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like it. And I don't know. Like, I like YA, I like YA fantasy. I don't know. I don't know. Because there was just so much hype. And I read it and I was so intrigued by Kaz Brekker, and his backstory is fascinating. And just the world that Leigh Bardugo creates and the different characters that she brings together. They all have challenging stories and this impossible heist that they have to pull off. And this book was so good. I was so excited to read Crooked Kingdom, which I also thoroughly enjoyed, not nearly as much as Six of Crows. Yeah, this was good. This was good. The next book was Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. And this is a retelling, and I don't remember the religious text. Ramayana. Okay. So Kaikeyi is kind of like the evil, jealous stepmother who basically banishes her stepson Rama from the land. And because she does that, he ends up slaying like a demon. And so in the Ramayana, Kaikeyi is depicted kind of as evil and cruel and mean. And the author in her foreword to this book tells the story of like when she was growing up, one of her relatives was like, no, what Kaikeyi was actually really good, because if she hadn't banished Rama, then he would never have slayed this demon. And so like it was a good thing that she did what she did. So this is a retelling from Kaikeyi's point of view. And there's a lot of buildup to that final event that we know is coming because it's a retelling. We've read the foreword. So there's a lot that leads up to that. But what leads up to it is so good. Again, we talk about women's agency, especially in another culture that is very patriarchal, and also in a time where women don't have the agency. There's also a lot of discussion about sisterhood, and because she's one of 3 wives, and so there's a lot about sisterhood and working together for each other. This also is an Indian retelling. And so like what I also enjoyed about it was like I have not read any Indian texts. I was an English education major, and I didn't read anything from this part of the world. So it was really fascinating for me to delve into um, a different culture and learn about that culture. She is working on another novel that's another retelling, and I'm super excited to read it. There was on some Facebook group that I'm in, I think it was like a book of the month group that I'm in, one of the moderators actually set up like a Zoom meeting with the author. So that was also really exciting to be a part of that. And she wrote this while she was studying law. She was in law school at Harvard, and she was taking a break from studying for the bar exam, and she's like, yep, I'm working on my next book, which is another retelling. So I'm looking forward to when that comes out. Then the next book is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, and this is my first book that I've read by her. And so this, again, I really enjoyed it's a soft sci-fi, like there's time travel involved. And so basically it's the story of Dana, who, this is set in the 1970s, and she's in an interracial marriage, and she gets pulled back to pre-Civil War South. And she rescues a boy drowning in the river. And she ends up going back and forth between modern time and pre-Civil War South, and living on this plantation. And every time that she goes back to the plantation, she stays there longer. And so then because she's staying there longer, it is more dangerous for her to stay there. And there was so much discussion on slavery and race relations, and then of course she is from the 1970s, so then having a hard time adjusting to things, and everyone kind of is like, you don't just fit in very well. And then like, what are her ties to this boy that she saves from the river, and how that plays out in her life. It was really good. A lot of people I know that have read other things by Butler that I watch on YouTube, they've said this is a good place to start with her if you've never read anything by her. And I am looking forward to reading Parable of the Sower next month in January. So the next book I read that I also really enjoyed this year was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And I picked this up actually last month for a readathon as a retelling. And I wasn't sure how I was going to like it, because a few years ago, I tried to read Circe by Madeline Miller, and I DNF'd Circe after about 100 pages. Like, I just didn't really enjoy it. And in high school, when we had to study Greek and Roman mythology my freshman year, I didn't have a really good teacher. And I have some bad memories of that teacher. So like, my feeling of Greek and Roman mythology is very skewed. I didn't really enjoy it. I had a hard time differentiating between all the different gods and what they did and who was who. Like, is this a Greek god? Is this a Roman god? And then what is their place in the pantheon? I had a hard time remembering all that stuff. So that's why I've hesitated towards reading this book, because this is the story of Achilles, who is the son of the sea goddess and then also a king. And he is like the best warrior. And this is set during the Trojan War. And he is raised with Patroclus, who he's exiled from his homeland, and because he murdered someone, he's exiled. So he goes and he ends up becoming the companion to Achilles. And in this book, Madeline Miller takes the take that they also become lovers. And there have been some hints in other writings from this time that might have been the case. So this is the story of, and it's told from the point of view of Patroclus. Her prose was just so beautiful, and it was just so heartbreaking to see the decisions that the gods and the people were making, and you're just watching it, and because this is based on Greek and Roman myth, to read like what the background. So as I was reading this, I was reading the background of like the events, because I didn't know. I didn't have to read the Iliad in school. I did read the Odyssey twice, but never read the Iliad. So I was trying to like get some of the background information, and then you're just like, oh, I know this is going to happen, and oh, this is happening, and not good. It was beautiful. The next book is another debut author, and I'm looking forward to reading more by this author, and that is As Long as the Lemon Tree Grows by Zulfa Katu. I'm probably totally butchering the name, and I apologize. So this is a YA novel, and this is set during the student revolution in Syria. And Salma Kassab, she was a pharmacy student, and when the revolution started, she ends up actually becoming a doctor at a local hospital, because the doctors have either died, have been imprisoned, or have fled the country. So they need doctors. So she ends up treating patients. And she also has severe PTSD. And her PTSD, part of how it's manifested itself is she has like hallucinations. And one of those hallucinations takes the form of a companion. And I'm not going to say his name because I'm going to butcher it. And that companion basically shows her and replays like her trauma as a way to like urge her to flee the country. So this book was just beautifully written. It was devastating to read of what she experienced and what the people of Syria are experiencing, and what they are doing to survive. But it was also very full of hope, and life and healing. Honestly, I feel like this should almost be required reading for high school students, because I think it was just so good. And gives us a different picture of the world. So seriously, I thoroughly recommend this book. Then the next book was for sure a 5-star read for me, and that was Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. And I mean, the first chapter just starts off with a bang, and it just kept going, and it just kept going. So this follows 3 different characters. One is Ziala, who is a captain of a ship, and she is a disgraced teak, and she is known for like that race is known for like songs and being able to control waters and control men. She then also is charged with bringing this passenger named Serapio onto her boat, and he has this mission that he is trying to accomplish. We also follow the Sun Priest, and I, for the life of me, don't remember her name. And that's, oh, wait, where did it go? Naranpa. And so she is like a Sun Priest, and she's trying to hold things together. Like, there are different factions of power that are trying to make power plays, and she's trying to keep the traditions alive. This again also is set in pre-Columbian times. So it was neat also to get that kind of a fantasy world. I love learning about Native American studies, and so that was fascinating for me to have that mythology and that world. And it was just so tense as we're building up to this high climatic event. It was so good that when I was done, I read this over the summer, so I was able to do this because I'm a teacher. So I read this, I finished it, and within like a half an hour, I was at the bookstore picking up Fevered Star. And this was just so good. And I'm looking forward to, I know next year in 2023, the third book is coming out. I'm so looking forward to picking it up. And then finally, this is where my exception is coming to play. I have 2 different books by the same author for reasons. So first is Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. And this is the 3rd book in the Tawny Man trilogy. And so then that makes it the 9th book in the Realm of the Elderlings. So when this was published, this was supposed to be like the ending to the Realm of the Elderlings when this was published. And it does a really nice job of tying up the loose ends that were started in the first 2 Tawny Man books, which I can't tell you their names. Fool's Quest and something fool related. I don't know. But because they're either going to have Fools, Assassins, Quest, or Fate in it. I just don't know what the combination is. That's terrible. At any rate, this does a nice job tying up things that were introduced in the first 2 books of Tawny Man. It has one of the best endings, I think, that I've read. And like, I don't memorize opening sentences. I don't memorize closing sentences. Like, I don't have that brain for that. Like, some people they can read it and retain it. I wish I had that brain. I don't. But I can remember the last line of this book, and it's a beautiful, one of the best last lines I've ever read. It was just beautiful. There's some people who don't like the pacing on the ending for reasons. I thought it was paced appropriately for reasons. Those reasons are spoilery. But I think it did a really good job tying up the events from the first 2 books in this trilogy, and then also tying things up from the Realm of the Elderlings to date. My last best of is also another Robin Hobb. I had to break things, and that would be Assassin's Fate, which is the 16th book in Realm of the Elderlings, and also the last book in Realm of the Elderlings. And the reason why I put this on here, I mean, this was, when you talk about heartbreaking, it was heartbreaking. The last 100 pages I was reading through tears. And I felt like when it was over, I felt like someone had died. Like, I went grocery shopping about an hour after I finished this book, and I was just like, just tossing stuff in the cart. I was like, I think I need this. And I just tossed it in. I was just numb. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like I'm grieving the loss of someone because this world is over. And again, like Robin Hobb knows how to close things. Like in most books, like I feel like a lot of trilogies that I've read, the third book has just been like, blah. Like some series had, like, the last book has even like ruined the trilogy. Divergent, we're looking at you. Like it has ruined things for me. But this just did such a wonderful job tying up things, but also leaving some things open just enough that, like, if she wants to write another story, she can. She's posted some things on Twitter this year where I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, she might be working on another book. Fingers crossed that happens and that we live to, and like that she can finish this. I need more, especially if it's about who she kind of alluded to it might be about. This trilogy, the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, there's a character that I just absolutely adore. There's some things that happened in this trilogy that kind of has changed my opinion on a character to, like, I don't, like, how I feel about this character is just so complicated now. There was an event as I was reading this, and I'm part of some booktubers discords, and one of the discords, I'm in Sarah Reed's Discord, and there was a moment where something happened, and I posted in there, if this happens, like, this is where I think that Robin Hobb is going with this book and what's going to happen to this character. And if this happens, I'm going to be so mad. I'm going to throw this book across the room, and I will not finish this book because I do not want this to happen. This is how the book needs to end. Well, she did what I did not want her to do. Robin Hobb had the ending that I did not want her to do. She had the ending that I said I was going to throw the book across the room for. And I did not throw the book across the room. Because by the time that it happened, by the time we got there, how the events unfolded and led up to that moment, I was like, nope, she's right. She's right. This is how this book needs to end. This is how this book and this is how this series needs to end. I was wrong. And while I'm not 100% happy with how this is ending, this also is how it has to end. And that's good. Like, that is good writing for an author to convince me that, like, nope, like, this is where it needs to go. So, for those of you who are picking up Hobb for the first time ever, and if you're starting with Assassin's Apprentice, and you're kind of like, man, this is slow, trust Hobb and trust the process. Because there are events that happen from book one that are major points all the way through. Like, I don't know how she did it. Like, she was going to stop the series with this book. And then because her publisher and editor wanted her to write more, she wrote 7 more books. And she was able to have things from the first books be heavily featured in the other 7 books, and to pick up themes from those beginning books. That is genius. Genius. So, like, yeah, like, genius. So, Robin Hobb, I discovered her. This is how I discovered Robin Hobb. I'm going to share the story, and then I'm going to end this video because we're approaching 30 minutes here. So I started watching BookTube in the spring of 2021. And I believe I was watching Reagan on Peru's Project. And she was reading a Robin Hobb book. I don't know what Robin Hobb book she was reading, but she was reading a Robin Hobb book. And she was reading, it had to have been like a Farsi or trilogy, I think. And so she showed it, she featured it on one of her videos. And I was like, ooh, that's a really pretty book. It's medieval looking, and I like medieval stories. And it's just a pretty book. I'm going to read that book. I have not, like, my first time reading adult fantasy, folks. Like, I read Tamora Pierce. I read some YA fantasy growing up. An Ember in the Ashes, that's YA fantasy. My first adult fantasy was Robin Hobb. And I picked her up because I thought the cover on a UK book was really pretty. what a random way to start Robin Hobb. And what a good choice that was, because she is now my favorite author. She has become a favorite because she just writes so beautifully. She is a slow burn, but the themes are so developed. The characters are so developed. The relationships are so well developed. So, pick up Robin Hobb. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what your favorite books of 2022 were, and what you're looking forward to reading in 2023. I hope you all have a wonderful Merry Christmas.